So we have been talking to a lot of people about the latest developments in the Sean Diddy Combs story. More specifically, I mean that federal agents raided properties connected to the rapper this past Monday. It's being reported this is all in connection to an ongoing sex trafficking investigation. Not clear if Combs is a target or subject of the investigation. Certain outlets are reporting that Combs is the target. Now, remember, target is essentially the person that prosecutors have evidence against, that they're building a criminal case against. It's also being reported that the search was pursuant to a search warrant issued through the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. Homeland Security were the ones who carried out the raid. NBC News reported that several people have been interviewed by federal authorities in connection to allegations of sex trafficking, sexual assault, solicitation, distribution of illegal narcotics and firearms. This comes on the heels of several high-profile lawsuits filed against Mr. Combs and his family and businesses and associates, alleging everything from sex trafficking to sexual assault to harassment. If you read the details of these lawsuits, you can't unhear them. You can't unsee them. It is just horrific stuff. And it is being reported that this search on the properties was for documents, electronic devices like phones, computers. It was a wild scene where you saw agents swarming onto the property, sometimes with guns drawn. We saw video of several people, including potentially Combs' sons, in handcuffs. Seems like they were detained, not arrested. Now, at the time of this recording, it is not even clear where Combs is at this time. But we do know that neither he nor anyone else has been arrested or charged or indicted in connection with this operation. However, a man named Brendan Paul, someone who is alleged to be Combs' drug mule, was arrested on cocaine and marijuana possession. This was charges out in Florida. He's been bailed out. His attorney released a statement, quote, "We do not plan on trying this case in the media. All issues will be dealt with in court." This was a statement from Brian Bieber, his attorney, that was issued to CNN. Okay, so with all that in mind, I want to bring on a special guest. I want to bring on right now attorney Brian J. McMonagle. He represents some very high-profile people, rapper Meek Mill, Bill Cosby. So he is no stranger to these situations where high-profile people face very serious accusations, allegations. They're in the spotlight. They're in the media. And I was so happy to get your perspective on this. Brian, thanks so much for coming on. Pleasure to meet you. So I got to just get your overall take on what happened here. I will tell you, first of all, we were talking about before the air, we've done stories on Diddy. I was maybe not one of the people that was that shocked when this came down because we were reporting on lawsuits where he was accused of sex trafficking and sexual assault. But to see what happened the other day, what was your reaction to it?
I was shocked. They didn't just come heavy; they came nuclear. Seeing the kind of federal response you saw at the execution of those warrants was stunning. It looked like they were hitting El Chapo's house when I saw it on the news, and I had the same reaction. I mean, I had been looking at it and hearing the allegations and studying some of the lawsuits, but I never thought it would rise to the level of federal intervention, particularly at that level. Stunned. And my initial thoughts were twofold. One is that they're very close to indicting somebody, or two, they had some really hard intel that told them they had to move quickly so they could discover evidence that their information was indicating was either located at one of these residents, but it was stunning in terms of the swiftness and the breadth of it, I must tell you.
Well, listen, I wanted your perspective, too, because it's fresh off the presses yesterday, late yesterday. Diddy's attorney, he's now being represented by Aaron Dyer, released a very long statement on the rapper's behalf. As a defense attorney, I'm curious your perspective on it. So it says, quote, "Yesterday, there was a gross overuse of military-level force as search warrants were executed at Mr. Combs' residences. There is no excuse for the excessive show of force and hostility exhibited by authorities or the way his children and employees were treated. Mr. Combs was never detained, but spoke to and cooperated with authorities. Despite media speculation, neither Mr. Combs nor any of his family members have been arrested, nor has their ability to travel been restricted in any way. This unprecedented ambush, paired with an advanced, coordinated media presence, leads to a premature rush to judgment of Mr. Combs and is nothing more than a witch hunt based on meritless accusations made in civil lawsuits. There has been no finding of criminal or civil liability with any of these allegations. Mr. Combs is innocent and will continue to fight every single day to clear his name. What are your thoughts on that?
Perfection. He's obviously represented by a great lawyer, and that's the exact response that you want. This is an indication from the defendant, if he is going to be a defendant, that they're not messing around, that they're not going to lie down. It's unequivocal. It's I'm innocent, and if you've got something, bring it. I don't know that you could have crafted a better statement, and I think it's an indication of what's to come, because if they are going to bring charges, this is a case that's going to go to trial.
Well, that's my question. So when they say that he cooperated, there was a lot of talk, a lot of early speculation that Diddy had left the country, that, he escaped. Doesn't appear to be the case. But what does it mean that he cooperated with them? Do you think he had advance notice of what was happening at his home? Do you think he was informed right when it was happening? What do you think it means by he cooperated?
I don't know that you could read much into that.
Okay.
Cooperation takes on a couple of different meanings. Cooperation could mean that he's already met with law enforcement. I don't think that he has. Cooperation could mean that he's cooperating with law enforcement. I don't think that he has. I think this was a statement by his lawyer basically saying, hey, listen, we're not going anywhere. We'll face these charges. If somebody needs access to dwellings or records, they can issue subpoenas. You don't have to come, with the strike force here. If you need information or if you need evidence, we've got it, and we look forward to cooperating with an investigation that'll clear my client's good name. And I think that's the only way you can read that.
Talk to me about, though, if this gives you any indication about where Diddy is. When I say that is, there was a question of did he leave the country, right? It seems to me if he's somehow cooperating and maybe gave up electronic devices, that he would still be in the country. You think that's a fair assessment?
It's hard to tell. I mean, if he had some pre-existing plans, it wouldn't be surprising. A guy with that lifestyle could be anywhere, but I would think it would make sense for everybody, if he's not in the country, for him to get back in the country quickly. Any important matter in your life deserves your attention. If I was advising him, I'd be advising him to come back home, to hold his chin up, and to get ready to deal with what's coming. It's probably going to start raining soon for him, and he's going to want to make sure that he makes it clear to everybody he's got nothing to run from, and that he won't run from anything. So if he's not in the country, I would expect in short order he will be back in the country without question.
Unless he went to a country that doesn't have an extradition policy. But let me ask you this.
That usually doesn't work out too well.
Oh, no? I mean, again, people were like, oh, my gosh, if he knew the heat was on him, he's just going to go somewhere where he doesn't have to come back. But you don't suspect that's what the case is?
Yeah, it's a small world. I've had some people try that. It doesn't usually work out too well.
Let me ask you this. The idea, and you are echoing, I think, what a lot of other attorneys, legal analysts have said, that it seems charges are about to come down. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people have said that they thought that with a raid, there would be an indictment in conjunction with it. People would be arrested. We haven't seen that. It's been, at the time of this recording, 2 days since the raid. Are you surprised we haven't seen arrests in connection with this? Again, what is a purported sex trafficking investigation? And do you think charges are going to come?
On the first question, I'm not surprised. I mean, they usually do it one of two ways. They'll either come heavy and indict immediately, or they're coming heavy to try and secure evidence so they can start a process of putting evidence before a grand jury. I mean, we don't even know if there has been any evidence presented to a grand jury yet. They're the feds. They're not the state courts, and they are not going to indict somebody or charge somebody on somebody's word alone, I can assure you. And so they want to try and develop as much evidence, forensic evidence. They're going to be looking at phones. They're going to be looking at travel. They're going to be looking at corroborating every allegation that's been made in these lawsuits. I wouldn't be surprised if they took their time because they know that they're going to get the best representation in the world for this celebrity, and they're not going to look to want to lose. And so, They're very interesting in how they operate, the feds. So I think trying to read too much into timing could be problematic, particularly if they didn't find anything. I mean, what did these searches yield? Did they get any evidence? Is there anything that they obtained that would make them run before a grand jury and bring charges? I think they're going to take their time unless they've got it, and I'd be surprised if they have it yet.
Couple of things there, right? So we know that you would need probable cause for a search warrant. They did show quite the presence. Now, you could say, and based on, I'm reading the lawsuits, right? And you read, if you take the allegations in the lawsuits, it's true that Diddy is surrounded by weapons, that he has quite the security presence, large properties. You don't know what you're entering into. I've spoken to law enforcement experts who say it's not surprising they came with that level of military reinforcements, or they talked about a military grade. But at the same time, the way that they did it was quite a statement, and to not have it be in conjunction with other charges at the moment, you say, it could have been that there's reporting that they had been speaking to certain individuals. Again, the belief is that this is emanating from the Southern District of New York, the U.S. attorneys for the Southern District of New York. But it seems, do you feel that they had more than just statements from witnesses to go after these properties, or to go into these properties like that?
Yeah, there's no doubt that they had something that kind of suggested a clear and present danger, or something that suggested to them that there was going to be real evidence there that could be destroyed. I don't think they would have came in the way they came without some hard intel. And so, I mean, it tells me one of two things. It tells me that they're getting real information about criminal activity. Whether it's true or not, who the heck knows? The criminal activity is ongoing. Otherwise, they wouldn't have came the way they came without an indictment. But I just think it's always you need to be cautious in terms of trying to understand their mindset. I don't know what drove those warrants. I don't know what that probable cause was. And I think that will tell us everything once those warrants get unsealed and charges emanate. But, they can always charge a couple of different ways in a federal case. You can charge by an information, or you can charge by a grand jury indictment. They've done neither here. And I think they were hoping to find something, and whether they found it or not, I don't know, but I didn't get a sense of that.
By the way, do you think the civil lawsuits have an effect on this? But what do I mean by that? I mean, we both know that even if you settle a lawsuit, like Cassie Ventura was one of his accusers, settled with him the day after filing that sexual assault lawsuit. She accused him of rape, really horrible, horrendous things, settles with him. She could be cooperating with law enforcement. Do you think, I mean, again, I just think the timing of this, after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, one of the latest ones is the one from his former producer, Little Rod Jones. I have to feel that has an effect on what's going on here. No?
I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, I don't believe in consecutive lightning strikes, and so I think that's exactly what's driving it. And you know how this goes. I mean, one witness, two witnesses, but a multitude of witnesses will get the attention of law enforcement. But this is a federal investigation, and this isn't just a sexual assault allegation like we see in the state courts. This is a trafficking investigation. And so the kind of investigation that usually follows that kind of investigation is lengthy. It's detailed, and I'd be surprised if they rushed into something here. That's just not how the feds operate. So they did come heavy. They sent a clear signal that they're coming. But how quickly you'll see charges, I think, remains to be seen. I'd be stunned if they move too quickly on this. That's just not who they are.
By the way, I have to ask. I mean, one of the big questions is if this is true, okay, let's just assume the worst here. Was this just like a known secret that nobody came out? Was it a situation, like maybe someone was afraid to come forward? I mean, we talked about it so much with other cases, right? R. Kelly, Jeffrey Epstein. But big question I keep getting asked is if this is true, is this just what was going on and nobody spoke up and nobody said anything? Was this just like part of the hip hop world? I mean, because it's you read the allegations in these lawsuits, it is next level.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that that this could be going on with the world not knowing. There's always too many people involved. There's a lot of money, and you can spend a lot of money keeping people quiet if there's criminal activity. But it would be stunning to me if all of these allegations are true, and everybody put their head in the sand. It's just unimaginable to me, quite frankly, because everybody's looking for an angle. Everybody's looking to make a buck. You've got people making accusations every day trying to derive some financial benefit from it. So it is shocking that it could have gone on that long, if it ever went on at all, without somebody knowing. But I think we're going to find out. I don't know if we're going to find out in a week or a month or 6 months, but I think something's going to come of this. It's the rarest of occasions where they execute warrants at this level and don't end up doing something about it. So I think that, Diddy's team is going to be poised for, charges to be leveled at some level at some point in time. Just how quickly, it's hard to tell.
Well, again, you represent high-profile people. What would you be advising Diddy right now if you were representing him?
Yeah, I'd be telling him, hey, listen, you're innocent. You haven't done anything wrong. So act like you haven't done anything wrong. Live your life. Keep your friends close and keep your enemies away from you. Walk like you're innocent. Talk like you're innocent. Continue to do the things that you do every day. Try to get yourself invested in some good things if you aren't already. I'm sure he's got a lot of charities, et cetera, that he's working on. Show yourself to be who we say you are. I think in that way, you don't make a bad situation, if it is a bad situation, even worse. So I think he's got to put a good face on and to make sure he lets the world know, and ultimately his jury know, that he's innocent. And I would take an aggressive approach if I was them. I really would, because this is a case that's going to garner an enormous amount of publicity. You're talking to jurors with your actions. And so he wants to make those actions real and right. And I'm sure that that'll happen. I'm sure he's in the best of hands, and they'll make sure that he's sending a message loud and clear to any particular jury pool that he's innocent of these charges, and he looks forward to defending them.
Now, let's say he's not charged yet, right? Would you? I can't. I'm not sure, but he's being attacked on the PR machine. I mean, everybody is saying things about him right now. And to give you an example, so 50 Cent came out, basically was trolling Diddy a lot. I know they have a feud. It's posted on Instagram. Now it's not Diddy do it, it's Diddy done. They don't come like that unless they got a case. It just got real. The feds in all the cribs. Damn, they got the kids in cuffs. Aubrey O'Day, who was part of Danity Kane, that was a music group that was started, I believe, by Diddy. She came out and said, "What you sow, you shall reap. I pray this emboldens all of us victims to finally speak on what we have endured." Would you advise Diddy to make a statement personally, whether it's an interview in a media outlet, or a statement of his own on social media, to respond to this?
Only if it's controlled. I've seen disaster after disaster. We saw it in the Penn State case where people went on Dateline. The defendant went on Dateline and got interviewed. It would have to be controlled. I think it would have to be brief. I think once you go down that road, you run into a lot of trouble. Keep in mind that the story here is a better story if he did it than if he didn't. And I've tried to be on the other side of that in cases, and you can see it go both ways. In our case with Meek, obviously the media was rooting for him because it was right, it was just. In other cases I've had, they didn't care what the accused had to say. That's not the story for them. The story is better if it's that he did it. And so I think if he's going to make any kind of a statement at all, it'd be a prepared statement, it'd be a quick statement, that he not take questions, and it'd be something probably as perfectly crafted as the response you saw from his lawyer. And that would be the end of it. Taking interviews, I think, can be a disaster. One misstep during an interview, and it's a news cycle for a month that you'll never be able to overcome. So very limited in terms of a response, but perhaps a response that's measured and brief.
And let's say Diddy is hit with these massive sex trafficking related charges, and you were to represent him. How do you defend him at trial? Again, you've represented very high profile people. Cosby is a name that comes up in a very high profile case. How would you represent him?
Well, I think it depends on what the evidence is. If the evidence is allegations being made by individuals, um, you do it the old-fashioned way. You develop an investigation. You find out everything that they've ever said about him, any motives they would have to lie about him. And one by one, you try and dissect the allegations. I don't think there's another way to do it. Sometimes you get real lucky in these cases. Somebody makes an allegation that you were somewhere at some place at some time, and you weren't. Uh, these other individuals, I'm sure, are being interviewed in the media. You want to get every single soundbite they've ever given, everything they've ever said about the case, and hold up those inconsistencies one against the other. And more importantly, if he's got evidence of innocence, sometimes you really do. You've got an innocent client there. Believe it or not, nobody believes that. And if this guy is innocent of these allegations, or if they've been distorted in any way, remember, you prove one distortion, and then all of a sudden the whole thing could collapse. And so, I'm sure what he's going to do and what his lawyers are going to do is they're going to dissect everything that's been alleged against him. The nice thing about civil lawsuits is there's a lot of information you can glean from them. There's depositions, there's interrogatories, and people are of record. And so there's great fodder for cross-examination in these cases. And I'm sure he's done a lot of wonderful things in his life. And those things are going to have to be brought to bear in a criminal courtroom. Let the world know how good he is and how good he's been, so that that image can be created. And, remember, in a criminal case, you don't need to convince 12. You just got to convince one.
One of the things, though, I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the Little Rod Jones lawsuit, but embedded in that lawsuit were screenshots of what appears to be Diddy with what appears to be underage girls at a party. Cuba Gooding Jr. is somebody who's been implicated in this. There's a picture of Little Rod Jones with Cuba Gooding Jr.'s arm around him. There is he claims Little Rod Jones, he has other evidence. He even says that Diddy has cameras in his house of all of this purported sexual conduct as a form of blackmail. He seems he came forward in that lawsuit. And again, it's a different standard. It's a lawsuit. It's not a criminal case. But he seems to have a lot to prove his allegations. And again, I wonder what that effect had on this case, because when I was reading it 4 weeks ago, I was like, he's not just making out, he's got receipts in a way of it. And I thought that was really substantial. I'm curious how that might be playing into this case.
Well, I think it's everything about this case at this point. I think they went looking for receipts. I mean, I think you're right. I think there was enough allegations and specific allegations that suggested that there was proof in existence in places that they could find it. And that's what they went looking for. I don't think these search warrants were just to send a message. They were looking for stuff. And I think it was based on a lot of the allegations you've just suggested. The question is, did they find the receipts? Because when you say there's tapes and when you say there's evidence and the feds go looking for it and they don't find it, well, that's one more quiver, in our arsenal in terms of being able to defend these cases. So I don't think you're wrong. I think, they were looking for the breadcrumbs and they were trying to find the kind of real evidence that the feds rely on when they indict somebody. Again, they're very careful. They're not going to go on somebody's allegations because of some picture. They're going to want to look at, real evidence. What evidence do they have that people are being brought into the country? I mean, you've got Homeland Security here. So This wasn't an FBI sting, an FBI warrant. This was Homeland Security. So they're looking at, international evidence. They're looking at flight evidence. They're looking at, whatever kind of real evidence that doesn't lie, that can't be cross-examined in order to bring a credible prosecution. And they won't come without it. They're not going to come with he say, she say stuff in federal court. They never do. And if they do come, then my guess is they're going to have to bring it with a lot of credible, real evidence. And whether they found any, they may have. I mean, they probably got computers and they probably got every single piece of digital information they could get to corroborate these allegations. But you're going to need corroboration, or they won't come.
What a case. What a case. What a development.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. And we will see where it goes. It's an ever developing story. Brian J. McMonagle, really thank you so much for coming on, talking about this, giving us a different perspective on it. We'll make sure to stay in touch as this definitely progresses.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.